At 11:47 p.m. on a freezing Thursday night, electrician Daniel Reese got the call that would destroy and rebuild his entire life. The voice on the other end belonged to Alina Cross, billionaire CEO, America's most untouchable woman, and someone who should never have his number. She needed him immediately. Her mansion was failing. But when Daniel arrived with his tool bag and his exhausted heart, he found something far more broken than faulty wiring. He found a woman who had everything except the one thing that mattered, and she found the man who would make her choose between her empire and her soul. If you want to see how a single father and a lonely billionaire survived the war that followed, stay until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The phone buzzing on the nightstand pulled Daniel out of sleep like a fishhook yanked through water. He cracked one eye open, groaning as the blue screen lit up the dark bedroom. 11:47 p.m. His body ached from the double shift he'd pulled that afternoon. 2 office buildings, 1 panicked restaurant owner whose walk-in freezer died during dinner rush, and a landlord who'd screamed at him for 20 minutes about rates he didn't set. He should have ignored it, let it go to voicemail, collapsed back into the few hours of sleep he had left before Lily woke up at 6 demanding pancakes. But the number wasn't saved, out of area. And late-night calls in his line of work meant one of 2 things: genuine emergency or genuine money. Sometimes both. Daniel swiped to answer and pressed the phone to his ear, voice rough. Reese Electric. There was a pause on the other end. Not the fumbling kind, the deliberate kind. Then a woman's voice came through, low, controlled, and laced with something Daniel couldn't quite name. Mr. Reese, my name is Alina Cross. I need an electrician immediately. Daniel sat up, rubbing his face. The name didn't register at first. His brain was still half asleep. What's the issue? Power failure. Partial. My security system is compromised and I can't get anyone else out here tonight. You try the grid? Could be the utility company. It's not the grid. Her tone sharpened. It's internal, and I need someone now. Daniel exhaled, already pulling on the jeans he'd left crumpled on the floor. Where are you located? She gave him an address in Thornhill Estates. That woke him up fast. Thornhill wasn't a neighborhood. It was a fortress. Gated community 20 minutes north of the city, where the driveways were longer than most people's streets, and the houses had names instead of numbers. People who lived there didn't call small-time electricians at midnight. They had private contractors on retainer, people who showed up in branded vans with secretaries and invoices printed on heavy paper. You still there? Alina's voice cut through his hesitation. Yeah, I'm here. It's just... He stopped himself. Didn't matter. A job was a job, and his truck payment was due in 3 days. I'll be there in 30 minutes. 20, she said. Then she hung up. Daniel stared at the phone for a second, then tossed it on the bed and grabbed his shirt off the chair. He moved quietly through the apartment, checking on Lily out of habit. She was asleep in her small bedroom, curled up under the weighted blanket he'd saved 2 months to buy her, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Her brown hair fell across her face in tangles. 6 years old and already better at holding herself together than he'd ever been. He kissed her forehead, left a note on the kitchen counter in case she woke up. Had to work. Back soon. Love you, Bug. And grabbed his keys. The drive north was quiet. Empty highways, scattered streetlights, the hum of the radio playing some late-night talk show he wasn't listening to. Daniel's mind kept circling back to the voice on the phone. Alina Cross. The name still didn't click, but something about the way she'd spoken stuck with him. Not rude exactly, just sealed off, like she was talking through bulletproof glass. When he finally pulled up to the address, he had to stop at a gatehouse just to get in. The guard checked his license, made a call, then waved him through without a word. The road beyond the gate curved through manicured trees and past houses that looked like they belonged in magazines. No lights in the windows, no cars in the driveways, just silence and money. The house at the end of the lane wasn't a house. It was a structure. All glass and sharp angles, 3 stories of modern architecture that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. The driveway alone could have fit 4 of Daniel's apartments. Landscape lighting glowed softly along the walkway, but the upper floors were dark. Half the ground floor windows, too. Daniel parked his truck, dented, rusted along the wheel wells, too loud, and grabbed his tool bag from the back. He felt out of place just standing there. Before he could knock, the front door opened. The woman standing in the doorway didn't look like someone who needed help. She looked like someone who gave orders and watched them happen. Tall, maybe 5'9", with dark hair pulled back in a way that was too sharp to be casual. She wore black slacks and a thin sweater that probably cost more than his truck, and her expression was unreadable. Not cold, but not warm either, just controlled. "Mr. Reese," she stepped aside without offering a handshake. "Thank you for coming." Daniel nodded and walked in, his boots too loud against the polished floor. The entryway was massive, high ceilings, abstract art on the walls, a staircase that curved up into darkness. Everything looked expensive and untouched, like a showroom. "Power's out on the second and third floors," Alina said, closing the door behind him. "Security system's offline. Backup generator kicked in for the essentials, but something's wrong with the main panel. I've had 3 electricians out here in the last 2 months, and no one can figure it out." Daniel set his tool bag down and looked around. "You get in surges? Flickering? Intermittent, mostly at night." She crossed her arms, watching him. "It started 6 weeks ago. Anything change around that time? New appliances? Construction?" Her jaw tightened just slightly. "No." There was something in the way she said it, too quick, but Daniel didn't push. "All right, let me check the panel first. Where is it?" "Basement, I'll show you." "Bosch?" She led him through the house without saying much. Daniel tried not to stare, but it was impossible. Every room they passed looked like it had been staged for a photo shoot. Perfect furniture, perfect lighting, not a dish in the sink, not a pair of shoes by the door. It didn't feel like anyone actually lived here. The basement was worse. Concrete floors, bare walls, industrial lighting, cold. Alina flipped a switch at the top of the stairs, and the lights came on in sections, buzzing faintly. At the far end of the room was the electrical panel, a commercial-grade beast with enough circuits to power a small office building. Daniel knelt in front of it, pulling the cover off. "You live here alone?" "Yes." He glanced back at her. She was standing near the stairs, arms still crossed, watching him work. "This setup's pretty intense for one person. The house was built for more." "But not anymore." She didn't answer. Daniel turned back to the panel, scanning the breakers. Everything looked normal at first glance. No signs of burning, no tripped circuits. But when he ran his voltage tester across the lines, the readings jumped. Inconsistent. Spiking. "You said this started 6 weeks ago." "Yes." "And nothing changed." Alina hesitated, just for a second. "My ex-husband died 7 weeks ago." Daniel stopped. He looked back at her again, and this time her face was different. Still controlled, but there was something underneath now, something cracked. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be. We were separated. He hadn't lived here in over a year." "But he owned the house?" "Half of it." Her voice flattened. "The estate's still being settled." Daniel nodded slowly, putting the pieces together. "And the electrical problems started right after?" "Yes." He stood up, brushing his hands off. "Show me his office." Alina's expression tightened. "Why?" "Because if he had any equipment still plugged in, servers, safes, anything on a dedicated line, it could be feeding back into the system, especially if it's on a timer or remote access." She didn't move. "Miss Cross, it's locked." "Then unlock it." Her eyes narrowed. "I haven't been in that room since he died." "You want me to fix this or not?" For a long moment she just stared at him. Then without a word, she turned and walked back upstairs. Daniel followed her up 2 flights, past more empty hallways and closed doors, until they reached the 3rd floor. At the end of the hall was a single door, dark wood, expensive handle. Alina stopped in front of it, her hand hovering over the keypad mounted on the wall. "He changed the code before he left," she said quietly. "I had to have it reset." She punched in the numbers. The lock clicked. The door swung open. The smell hit Daniel first. Stale air, old cologne, dust. The room beyond was dark except for a faint glow coming from the corner. Alina reached for the light switch, but nothing happened. "Breaker's off," Daniel muttered. He pulled his flashlight from his belt and stepped inside. The office was a monument to ego. Massive desk, leather chairs, shelves lined with books that looked like they'd never been opened. But what caught Daniel's attention was the corner, where a server rack sat humming softly, lights blinking in the dark. "There's your problem," he said, walking over. "This thing's still running." "That's impossible. I had everything shut down." "A swoosh. Bus. Not this." Daniel crouched down, inspecting the setup. "It's on a separate circuit, probably tied to a battery backup." "How long's it been running?" "I don't know." He traced the power line back to the wall, following it down to a hidden outlet. Then he reached behind the server and pulled the plug. The hum stopped. The lights went dark, and somewhere in the house below them, the power surged back on. Alina's breath caught. She looked at Daniel, her expression unreadable again, but her hands were shaking. "What was he keeping on there?" Daniel asked. "I don't know." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I never asked." "Awesome." Daniel stood up slowly, brushing the dust off his hands. He didn't know what he'd expected to find tonight, but it wasn't this. Not the locked room, not the dead husband's ghost still running through the walls, not the look on Alina Cross's face like she'd just realized she was haunted. "You're going to want to have someone go through that server," he said quietly. "Make sure there's nothing else tied to it. I'll handle it. And you should probably change the locks, all of them." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time since he'd arrived, her mask slipped. Just a little. Just enough to see the exhaustion underneath, the loneliness. "Thank you," she said. Daniel nodded. "You're welcome." They stood there for a moment in the dark office, surrounded by the remnants of a man neither of them had liked. And Daniel realized something strange. He didn't want to leave. Not because of the job, not because of the money, because for the first time in years, he'd seen someone who looked just as tired as he felt, and he recognized it. Mitz. Over the next 3 days, Daniel tried to forget about Alina Cross. He went back to his regular jobs, rewiring a dental office, fixing a busted breaker at a laundromat, installing outlets in a new apartment complex. He picked Lily up from school, made her dinner, helped her with her homework, tucked her in. Normal life, quiet life. But his phone buzzed again on Sunday afternoon. Same number. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of him. "Reese. Mr. Reese, it's Alina Cross." Daniel leaned back against his kitchen counter, watching Lily color at the table. "Everything still working?" "Yes, but I have another property, a commercial building downtown. The lighting system's been acting up. I'd like you to take a look." "You've got property managers for that. I want you." He didn't know what to say to that. "I'll pay double your rate," Alina added, "and I'll need you available on short notice, ongoing work, if you're interested." Daniel looked at Lily, at the stack of bills on the counter, at the overdue notice from the credit card company he'd been ignoring for 2 weeks. "When do you need me?" "Mom. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'll text you the address." "All right." "And Mr. Reese?" "Yeah?" Her voice softened, just slightly. "Bring your daughter if you need to. I know it's short notice." Daniel's chest tightened. "How did you left a note on your counter. I saw it when I walked you out." He didn't remember that. But then again, he'd been too distracted by the look on her face in that office. "I'll figure it out," he said. "The offer stands." She hung up before he could answer. Daniel stood there for a long moment, staring at the phone. Then Lily looked up from her coloring book, her big brown eyes curious. "Who is that, Daddy?" "Work," Daniel said, slipping the phone into his pocket. "Just work." But it didn't feel like just work. And he couldn't shake the feeling that Alina Cross wasn't calling him because she needed an electrician. She was calling because she needed someone who understood what it felt like to be trapped inside a life that looked fine from the outside. Someone who knew what it meant to survive alone. Monday morning came fast. Daniel dropped Lily off at school, kissed her goodbye, and drove downtown to the address Alina had sent. The building was in the business district. Sleek glass tower, 30 floors, lobby full of marble and modern art. The kind of place where people wore suits and walked fast and didn't make eye contact. Alina was waiting for him in the lobby. Same sharp clothes, same unreadable face. But when she saw him, something softened. "Mr. Reese, Miss Cross, nah." She almost smiled. You can call me Alina. Daniel. She nodded. Follow me. She led him through the building, up an elevator, down a sterile hallway, into a conference room that overlooked the city. The lights inside flickered faintly when she flipped the switch. It's been doing that for a week, she said. Maintenance says it's the ballasts, but I think it's the wiring. Daniel set his tool bag down and looked up at the ceiling panels. You own this whole building? 70%. He let out a low whistle. That's a lot of property. It's a lot of problems. She said it flatly, like she was talking about the weather, but Daniel heard the weight behind it. He climbed up on the table and popped open one of the ceiling panels, inspecting the wiring. Alina stood below, watching him work. Can I ask you something? She said after a moment. Sure. Why did you become an electrician? Daniel glanced down at her, surprised. That's a random question. I'm curious. He went back to the wiring, thinking. My dad was one. Taught me when I was a kid. I liked it. Made sense. Fix something broken, it works again? Simple. And you're raising your daughter alone. It wasn't a question. Yeah. That's not simple. Daniel paused. No, it's not. What happened to her mother? He didn't answer right away. He finished tightening a connection, closed the panel, and climbed back down. When his feet hit the floor, he finally looked at Alina. She left 2 years ago. Decided she didn't want to be a mom anymore. Alina's face didn't change, but her eyes did. Something flickered there. Recognition, maybe, or sympathy. I'm sorry, she said. It's fine. We're fine. You don't have to say that. Daniel met her gaze, and for a second the walls between them thinned. Why are you really calling me? He asked. Alina's jaw tightened. Because you're good at your job. There are 100 electricians in this city. And none of them looked at me the way you did. Daniel frowned. What way? Like I was human. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and raw. Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Alina turned away, looking out the window at the city below. I've spent the last 10 years building this company. I've made more money than I'll ever need. I've earned respect, power, influence. And I've never been lonelier in my entire life. Her voice cracked, just barely, but Daniel heard it. You don't have to explain, he said quietly. I know. She didn't turn around. But I wanted to. Skot. They stood there in silence for a long moment. Then Alina took a breath and straightened her shoulders, pulling the mask back into place. The lights should be fine now, Daniel said, but I'll check the rest of the floor to be sure. Thank you. He picked up his tool bag and headed for the door, but before he left, he stopped. Alina. She looked at him. You're not alone. Not anymore. Her eyes widened slightly. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Daniel left before she could answer. But as he walked down the hallway, he realized something. He wasn't just talking about her, he was talking about himself. The calls kept coming. Not every day, but often enough that Daniel started recognizing Alina's number before he even looked at the screen. A faulty outlet at one of her rental properties. Flickering lights in a parking garage she owned. A tripped breaker at a storage facility across town. Small jobs, mostly. Things her property managers should have handled. But she kept calling him, and he kept showing up. By the third week, Daniel realized what was happening. She wasn't calling because things were broken. She was calling because she didn't want to be alone. And the hell of it was, neither did he. It started small. Conversations while he worked. Alina would stand nearby, asking questions that had nothing to do with electrical systems. Where did Lily go to school? What did Daniel do on weekends? Whether he liked living in the city. Her voice stayed controlled, professional, but her eyes gave her away. She was starving for something normal, something real. Daniel understood that hunger. He'd been living with it for 2 years. One afternoon in late September, he was replacing a breaker at one of her office buildings when Alina's phone rang. She answered it, her tone shifting instantly into something colder. I told you I'm not interested. A pause. Because I don't care what the board thinks. Another pause, longer this time. Then they can vote me out. I'm done pretending. She hung up and shoved the phone into her pocket, her jaw tight. Daniel glanced over from the electrical panel. Everything okay? Boraro. De Kiki. It's fine. Doesn't sound fine. Alina looked at him, and for a moment he thought she might actually tell him the truth. But then the mask slid back into place. Just business. Daniel didn't push. He finished tightening the last connection and closed the panel door. You're all set. Thank you. He wiped his hands on his jeans and picked up his tool bag. But before he could leave, Alina spoke again. Do you ever get tired of it? Daniel turned back. Tired of what? Pretending everything's fine when it's not. He studied her face, the cracks showing through the polish. Every single day. She nodded slowly. Me too. They stood there in the empty office, the afternoon sun cutting through the windows, and Daniel made a decision he probably shouldn't have. You eaten today? Alina blinked. What? It's almost 4. I'm guessing you skipped lunch. I need to pick up Lily from school in an hour, but there's a diner 2 blocks from here. You want to grab something? She stopped herself. I don't usually eat at diners. I didn't ask what you usually do. Her expression softened, just slightly. All right. 20 minutes later, they were sitting across from each other in a booth at Rosie's, a place with cracked vinyl seats and a menu that hadn't changed since 1987. Alina looked completely out of place in her tailored blazer and designer watch, but she didn't seem to care. She ordered coffee and a grilled cheese like she'd been doing it her whole life. Daniel ordered the same, plus fries. This is where you eat? Alina asked, looking around. When I can afford it, yeah. Lily loves their pancakes. You bring her here often? Every Sunday. It's our thing. Alina's expression shifted. Something wistful crossed her face. That sounds nice. It is. The waitress brought their food, and they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Alina set down her coffee and looked at him. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did her mother leave? Daniel's jaw tightened. He'd known the question was coming eventually. She said she couldn't do it anymore, being a mom, being tied down. She wanted her life back. And she just left? No custody arrangement? No visitation? She signed away her rights, said it was better for everyone. Daniel stared at his plate. Maybe she was right. Lily doesn't ask about her anymore. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, it doesn't. Alina reached across the table and touched his hand. Just for a second. But it was enough to crack something open in Daniel's chest. You're a good father, she said quietly. I'm a tired father. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Daniel looked up at her, and the honesty in her eyes hit him harder than he expected. What about you? You ever think about having kids? Alina pulled her hand back, wrapping it around her coffee cup. I thought about it, before everything fell apart. With your ex-husband? Yes. Her voice flattened. He wanted children. I wasn't sure. And then I realized I didn't want them with him. I didn't want anything with him. Why'd you marry him? Because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Build the company, marry the right person, check all the boxes. She laughed bitterly. Turns out checking boxes doesn't make you happy. No, it doesn't. Oh. They finished their food, and Daniel paid the check over Alina's objections. As they walked back to the parking lot, Alina stopped beside her car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Daniel made in 5 years. Thank you, she said, for this. It's just a grilled cheese. It's more than that. Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Alina hesitated, then spoke again. I know this is unprofessional, but would you want to bring Lily by sometime? To the house. I have a pool. And a yard. I thought maybe she'd like it. Daniel's chest tightened. You don't have to do that. I know. I want to. He searched her face, looking for the angle, the catch. But all he saw was loneliness. All right, he said. Saturday? Alina's face brightened in a way he hadn't seen before. Saturday. That Saturday, Daniel pulled up to Alina's mansion with Lily in the back seat, clutching her stuffed rabbit and asking 1,000 questions. She'd been buzzing with excitement since he told her about the pool, and now she was practically vibrating. Is she nice, Daddy? Yeah, Bug, she's nice. Does she have kids? No. Why not? Because not everyone does. Lily thought about that. Is she lonely? Daniel glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Sometimes his daughter saw things he wished she didn't have to. Maybe a little. Then we should be extra nice to her. Yeah, we should. Alina was waiting for them at the front door, and Daniel barely recognized her. No blazer, no perfect hair. Just jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger, less guarded. Lily climbed out of the truck and stared up at the house with wide eyes. Whoa, whoa. Alina smiled. Hi, you must be Lily. Hi. Lily clutched her rabbit tighter. Your house is really big. It is. Too big sometimes. Can I see the pool? Of course. Alina led them around the side of the house, through a gate, into a backyard that looked like something out of a resort magazine. Pristine pool, stone patio, lounge chairs, perfectly trimmed hedges. Lily gasped. Daddy, can I swim? Did you bring your, I have suits inside, man, Alina said quickly. Different sizes. I thought maybe Lily might want to swim, so I picked some up yesterday. Daniel looked at her, surprised. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Lily was already tugging on Daniel's hand. Please, Daddy? All right, go ahead. Yes, sir. Alina took Lily inside to change, and Daniel stood by the pool, feeling completely out of place. This wasn't his world. This wasn't his life. But when Lily came running back outside in a bright pink swimsuit, laughing as she cannonballed into the water, he realized it didn't matter. She was happy. And that was enough. Alina came back outside in a swimsuit of her own, and Daniel tried very hard not to stare. She slipped into the pool beside Lily, and within minutes, the two of them were playing some kind of game that involved a lot of splashing and laughter. Daniel sat in one of the lounge chairs watching. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen Lily this carefree. She was always a little too serious for a 6-year-old, always a little too aware that her dad was tired and her mom was gone. But right now she was just a kid, and Alina was right there with her. Not awkward, not distant, just present. After an hour, Lily climbed out of the pool and ran over to Daniel, dripping water everywhere. Daddy, Alina's really nice. I told you. Oh, she said we can come back next week. Daniel glanced over at Alina, who was toweling off by the edge of the pool. She caught his eye and smiled. A real smile this time. We'll see, Bug. That means yes, Lily whispered loudly. Alina laughed, and the sound was so genuine that Daniel felt something shift in his chest. They stayed for dinner. Alina ordered pizza, the fancy kind, from some place Daniel had never heard of, but Lily didn't care. She devoured 3 slices and then fell asleep on the couch halfway through a movie, her head resting on Alina's shoulder. Daniel watched them from the other side of the couch, his heart doing something complicated. She's a great kid, Alina said softly, careful not to wake her. She is. You're doing a good job. I'm doing the best I can. That's all any of us can do. Daniel looked at her. You're good with her. Alina's expression flickered. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. But you're doing it anyway. She smiled. And in that moment, Daniel realized he was in trouble. Because he wasn't just attracted to her. He wasn't just grateful for the work. He was starting to care about her. Really care. And that scared the hell out of him. Over the next few weeks, the 3 of them fell into a rhythm. Daniel would bring Lily by on Saturdays, and they'd spend the afternoon at Alina's house, swimming, watching movies, eating takeout. Sometimes Alina would ask Lily about school, and Lily would chatter away about her teacher and her friends, and the drawing she'd made that week. Alina listened to every word like it was the most important thing she'd ever heard. And slowly, Daniel watched Alina change. The walls came down, the mask slipped. She laughed more, smiled easier. She started keeping snacks in the house that Lily liked, started asking Daniel about his week, his jobs, his life, started looking at him in a way that made his pulse kick up. One Saturday in October, after Lily had gone to bed in one of Alina's guest rooms, because somehow they'd stayed later than planned again, Daniel and Alina sat on the back patio, a bottle of wine between them. This is nice, Alina said, staring out at the darkened yard. Yeah, it is. I didn't think I'd ever have this. Have what? This, people, family. She looked at him. I know it's not real. I know you're just being kind. It's real, Daniel interrupted. Alina's breath caught. Daniel, I mean it. This isn't charity. This isn't pity. I'm here because I want to be. Why? Because you make me feel less alone. And I think maybe I do the same for you. Alina's eyes filled with tears. She looked away quickly, wiping them. I'm sorry, I don't usually... You don't have to apologize. She laughed, shaky. I've spent so many years being strong, being untouchable, and now I'm sitting here crying in front of the electrician. I'm not just the electrician. No, you're not. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Alina spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm falling for you, and I don't know what to do about it. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He should have been shocked, should have pulled back. But he wasn't, because he'd been feeling the same thing for weeks. I'm falling for you too, he said. Alina looked at him, and in her eyes he saw everything she'd been hiding. The loneliness, the fear, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something real. Daniel reached for her hand, and she let him take it. I don't know how to do this, she said. I've never been good at relationships. I've never let anyone in. Then we'll figure it out together. What about Lily? She already loves you. Alina's eyes filled again. I love her too. Yeah. Daniel pulled her closer, and she came willingly, resting her head against his shoulder. They sat there under the stars, holding each other like two people who'd been drowning and finally found solid ground. But neither of them knew that the ground was about to give way. It started with a phone call 3 days later. Daniel was at a job site when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Reese? Yeah. This is Patricia Holbrook. I'm an attorney representing the estate of Claire Reese. Daniel's blood went cold. Claire, Lily's mother. What do you want? I'm calling to inform you that Ms. Reese passed away 2 weeks ago in a car accident. I'm very sorry for your loss. Daniel couldn't speak. Claire was dead. The woman who'd walked out on them, who'd signed away her rights, who'd disappeared without looking back. She was gone. Mr. Reese? I'm here. There's a matter we need to discuss. Ms. Reese left a will. And in that will, she left a substantial inheritance to your daughter. Daniel's head spun. How much? Daniel's head. $750,000. The world tilted. Mr. Reese, are you still there? Yeah. His voice came out rough. I'm here. We'll need to arrange a meeting to discuss the details. And there's one more thing. Ms. Reese's parents, Lily's grandparents, have expressed interest in being involved in Lily's life. They weren't aware of her existence until recently. They'd like to meet her. No. I understand this is difficult, but they didn't care about her when Claire was alive. They don't get to care now. Mr. Reese, I strongly advise you to consider this carefully. They're Lily's family. I'm her family. That's it. He hung up before the lawyer could respond. Daniel stood there in the middle of the job site, his hands shaking, his mind racing. Claire was dead. Lily had money. And now her grandparents, people who'd never acknowledged her existence, wanted in. He called Alina. She answered on the second ring. Daniel, what's wrong? Can you meet me? I need to talk to you. Of course. Where? The diner. 20 minutes. I'll be there. When Alina arrived, Daniel was already in their usual booth, staring at a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. She slid in across from him, her face tight with worry. What happened? Daniel told her everything. The call, Claire's death, the inheritance, the grandparents. Alina listened without interrupting, her expression darkening with every word. They can't just take her, she said when he finished. They can try. Not if we fight them. Daniel looked up at her. We? Alina reached across the table and grabbed his hand. You think I'm going to let them take Lily away from you? From us? Alina, this isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Because she's not just your daughter anymore. She's ours. Daniel's throat closed up. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. He stared at her, and in that moment, he realized he'd been wrong. This wasn't just falling. This was something deeper, something permanent. What do we do? He asked. We get you a lawyer, a good one, and we make sure those people never get near Lily. I can't afford a lawyer like that. You don't have to. I can. Alina. Daniel, stop. Let me help you. Please. He wanted to argue, wanted to say he didn't need her money, didn't need her to fix this. But the truth was, he did. Because if he lost Lily, he lost everything. Okay, he said quietly. Alina squeezed his hand. We're going to win this. But Daniel could already feel the storm coming, and he wasn't sure either of them was ready for it. The meeting with Claire's parents happened 2 weeks later, despite Daniel's objections. The lawyer insisted it was in everyone's best interest to at least have a conversation. Alina hired Daniel, the best family attorney in the state, a woman named Catherine Vance, who had a reputation for destroying opposing counsel in custody battles. They met at Catherine's office. Daniel sat on one side of the conference table with Alina and Catherine. On the other side sat Richard and Margaret Holbrook, Claire's parents. They looked exactly like Daniel expected. Expensive clothes, cold eyes, the kind of people who measured worth in dollars and square footage. Richard spoke first. Mr. Reese, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I didn't agree. My lawyer said I had to. Margaret's lips thinned. We're not here to fight. We simply want to know our granddaughter. You didn't want to know her when your daughter was alive. We didn't know she existed, Richard said sharply. Claire never told us. That's because she knew you wouldn't approve. That's not fair, Sta. Fair? Daniel leaned forward. You want to talk about fair? Claire walked out on Lily when she was 4 years old, signed away her rights, told me she didn't want to be a mother. And now you show up after she's dead talking about fairness? Mr. Reese, the Holbrooks lawyer began. Catherine cut him off. My client has full legal custody of his daughter, Ms. Reese voluntarily terminated her parental rights. You have no legal standing here. But this does get bait. Richard's jaw tightened. We're not asking for custody? We're asking for visitation. And I'm saying no, Daniel said. Margaret's voice shook. She's our granddaughter, our only connection to our daughter. You can't just keep her from us. Watch me. The meeting went downhill from there. The Holbrooks accused Daniel of being unstable, financially insecure, and dependent on a woman he'd only known for 2 months. They hinted that Lily deserved better, that she deserved a family who could provide for her. Alina spoke for the first time, her voice ice cold. If you think money makes a family, you're more broken than I thought. Margaret turned on her. And who are you exactly? The girlfriend? How long before you leave, just like Claire did? Alina didn't flinch. I'm the person who's going to make sure you never hurt that little girl. The Holbrooks left the meeting empty-handed, but Daniel knew it wasn't over. Catherine confirmed it 2 days later. They're filing for grandparents' rights, and they're alleging that you're an unfit parent. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. On what grounds? Financial instability, lack of support system, and they're claiming your relationship with Ms. Cross is inappropriate and unstable. That's insane. It doesn't matter. They have money, they have lawyers, and they're going to fight dirty. Alina was sitting beside Daniel in Catherine's office, her hand on his knee. So we fight dirtier. Catherine looked at her. Ms. Cross, I need to be honest with you. Your involvement could hurt this case. The Holbrooks are going to paint you as a destabilizing influence, a distraction. Then let them try. Alina, Daniel started. No. She looked at him, her eyes fierce. I'm not walking away. I don't care what they say about me. I don't care what it costs. I'm staying. Daniel's chest ached. You could lose everything. I've already lost everything. Until I found you and Lily, I had nothing that mattered. Her voice cracked. So let them come. Let them try to take her, because I'm not going anywhere. Daniel pulled her into his arms, and she held on tight. Catherine watched them, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. All right, then we fight. And the war began. The first hearing was scheduled for early November. Catherine warned them it would be preliminary, just a judge reviewing the petition, determining whether the Holbrooks had enough standing to proceed. But even preliminary felt like a guillotine hanging over Daniel's neck. The night before the hearing, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind running through every worst-case scenario. What if the judge sided with them? What if they painted him as the broke, desperate father clinging to a woman out of his league? What if they took Lily? At 2 in the morning, his phone buzzed. A text from Alina. Are you awake? He typed back. Yeah, come over. Daniel hesitated. Lily was asleep down the hall. He couldn't just leave her. But before he could respond, another text came through. Bring her. She can sleep in the guest room. 10 minutes later, Daniel was carrying Lily through Alina's front door. She didn't wake up, just mumbled something about pancakes and buried her face in his shoulder. Alina was waiting in the entryway, barefoot, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. No makeup, hair loose. She looked more human than he'd ever seen her. I couldn't stop thinking, she said quietly. Me neither. She led them upstairs, and Daniel tucked Lily into the guest bed. She curled up immediately, clutching her rabbit. He kissed her forehead and followed Alina back downstairs. They ended up in the kitchen. Alina made tea, neither of them drank, and they sat at the counter in silence for a long time. What if we lose? Daniel finally asked. We won't. You don't know that. No. But I know we're not going to let them take her without a fight. Alina looked at him, her eyes red-rimmed. I've been thinking about something. What? I want to step back from the company. Daniel's head snapped up. What? Not completely, but I want to hand off day-to-day operations, bring in a CEO. I've been running myself into the ground for 10 years, and for what? So I can die alone in a big house with a fat bank account? Her voice cracked. That's not a life. That's just existence. Alina, you can't make that decision because of us. I'm not making it because of you. I'm making it because of me. She reached for his hand. For the first time in my life, I know what I actually want. And it's not board meetings and quarterly reports. It's this, you, Lily, a life that means something. Daniel's throat tightened. What if the judge uses that against us? Says you're unstable, making rash decisions. Then let them. I don't care anymore. She squeezed his hand. I'd rather lose everything fighting for something real than keep everything and stay empty. Daniel pulled her into his arms, and she collapsed against him. They held each other in the silent kitchen, two people who'd spent years surviving alone and were now terrified of losing the one thing that made them feel alive. The courthouse was cold and impersonal. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, hard benches that made Daniel's back ache. He sat beside Catherine, Alina on his other side, and tried not to look at the Holbrooks across the aisle. Richard sat ramrod straight in his tailored suit. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, playing the grieving grandmother. Daniel wanted to throw up. The judge was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and an expression that gave nothing away. She reviewed the petition, listened to the Holbrooks' lawyer lay out their case, how they'd only recently learned of their granddaughter's existence, how they wanted to be part of her life, how they could provide stability and resources Daniel couldn't match. Then Catherine stood up. Your Honor, this petition is nothing more than an attempt by wealthy grandparents to insert themselves into a child's life after years of complete absence. The biological mother voluntarily terminated her parental rights. Mr. Reese has been the sole caretaker of his daughter for over 2 years. She is happy, healthy, and thriving in his care. The Holbrooks have no legal standing, and frankly, their sudden interest in this child reeks of opportunism. The Holbrooks' lawyer shot to his feet. Opportunism? My clients just lost their daughter, a daughter who chose not to involve them in her child's life, Catherine cut in. A daughter who walked away from her own child. My client has done everything right. He has provided a stable, loving home. And now, because of an inheritance, these people want access to a granddaughter they've never met. That's not family. That's greed. Objection. Enough! The judge's voice cut through the room. She looked at both lawyers, then at Daniel, then at the Holbrooks. I'm going to allow this petition to proceed to a full hearing, but I want to be clear. Grandparents' rights are not guaranteed. Mr. Reese, you will need to demonstrate that you can provide a stable environment for your daughter. Mr. and Mrs. Holbrook, you will need to prove that your involvement is genuinely in the child's best interest and not, as counsel suggests, motivated by financial gain. We'll reconvene in 3 weeks. She banged the gavel, and Daniel felt the floor drop out from under him. Catherine put a hand on his shoulder. This isn't over. We knew this was possible. They're going to destroy me, Daniel said. Not if I destroy them first. Alina was already on her feet, her face pale but determined. What do we do now? We prepare, Catherine said, and we make sure every aspect of Daniel's life is airtight. No cracks, no weaknesses, nothing they can use. The Holbrooks walked past them on their way out. Margaret's eyes lingered on Lily's empty seat. Daniel had left her with a neighbor, refusing to bring her to this circus. Richard's gaze landed on Alina, cold and assessing. "Miss Cross," he said, "I hope you know what you're getting into." Alina stepped forward, her voice low and lethal. "I know exactly what I'm getting into. Do you?" Richard's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He just walked away, his wife trailing behind him. Outside the courthouse, the media was waiting. Somehow word had gotten out. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Miss Cross, is it true you're dating a single father? Are you trying to buy custody of his daughter? Is this relationship affecting your company?" Alina ignored them all, grabbing Daniel's hand and pulling him toward her car. They climbed in, and she peeled out of the parking lot, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "This is going to get worse," Daniel said. "I know. They're going to drag us through the mud. Every reporter, every tabloid. I don't care. Alina, I don't care." She slammed her hand against the steering wheel. "Let them write whatever they want. Let them call me unstable, manipulative, whatever. I'm not backing down." Daniel stared at her. "You're really willing to lose everything for us?" "Baby, sit. You're not everything I'm losing, Daniel. You're everything I'm gaining." His chest ached. He reached over and took her hand, and she held on like a lifeline. The media frenzy started that night. By morning, their story was everywhere. Billionaire CEO Alina Cross in custody battle over boyfriend's daughter. Photos of Alina and Daniel leaving the courthouse. Speculation about their relationship. Opinion pieces arguing whether a woman like Alina was fit to be around a child. Daniel's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters. Old friends he hadn't talked to in years, suddenly curious. Even clients started calling, asking questions he didn't want to answer. He turned his phone off and went to pick up Lily from school. She climbed into the truck, her backpack dragging on the ground. "Hi, Daddy." "Hey, Bug, how was school?" "Good. We learned about penguins." "Yeah, what'd you learn?" "They mate for life. Mrs. Carter said that means they stay together forever." Daniel's throat tightened. "That's right. Like you and Alina?" He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "What? Are you going to stay together forever?" He didn't know how to answer that. "I hope so." "Me too. I like her." "I know you do. She's not like Mommy." Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No, she's not. Mommy left because she didn't want me." "Lily, it's okay, Daddy. I know, but Alina wants me, right?" Daniel pulled the truck over, his vision blurring. He twisted around to look at his daughter, this 6-year-old who'd learned too young that people could leave, that love wasn't guaranteed. "Yeah, Bug. She wants you. She wants both of us." Lily smiled. "Good. I don't want her to leave. She's not going to." "Promise?" Daniel couldn't promise that. Couldn't promise anything in a world where judges could rip families apart, and grandparents could weaponize money, and the media could destroy people for sport. But he looked at his daughter's hopeful face and lied anyway. "Promise. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with a glass of whiskey he didn't remember pouring. The walls of his small apartment felt like they were closing in. The hearing was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prove he was fit. 3 weeks to convince a judge that he and Alina weren't just some reckless fling, that they were building something real. 3 weeks to keep his daughter. His phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "We need to talk." "Can you come by my office tomorrow morning?" Daniel texted back. "What's wrong?" "Just come by." 9 a.m. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he dropped Lily off at school and drove to Catherine's office. Alina was already there, sitting across from Catherine's desk, her face pale. "What happened?" Daniel asked. Catherine slid a folder across the desk. "The Holbrooks filed an emergency motion yesterday. They're asking for temporary custody." Daniel's world stopped. "What?" "They're claiming you're an unfit parent, that you're emotionally unstable, financially insecure, and that your relationship with Ms. Cross is putting Lily at risk. That's insane. They have affidavits. From your landlord saying you've been late on rent twice in the last 6 months. From Lily's school saying she's missed several days this semester. From a former client who claims you showed up to a job site intoxicated. Daniel's voice broke. I've never been drunk on a job. Ever. I know, but they're building a narrative and they're moving fast. Alina stood up, her hands shaking. Can they really take her? Before the hearing? It's unlikely, but the judge will review the motion. If she thinks there's enough evidence of immediate danger, she could grant temporary custody pending the full hearing. Daniel couldn't breathe. When? 2 days. 2 days. 48 hours to prove he wasn't a danger to his own daughter. Alina grabbed his hand. We'll fight this. We'll get character witnesses, testimonials, proof that you're a good father. It won't matter. Daniel pulled away, pacing. You heard her. They have paperwork, affidavits. I have what? A 6-year-old who loves me? That's not going to stand up in court. Daniel, they're going to take her. His voice cracked. They're going to take my daughter, and there's nothing I can do about it. Stop. Alina grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. Stop. You are not giving up. We are not giving up. Do you hear me? Alina, they have money, power, lawyers who get paid more in an hour than I make in a month, and I have more money than they do, more power, better lawyers. Her eyes blazed. I will burn every dollar I have before I let them take Lily. So stop acting like this is over, because it's not even close. Daniel stared at her, and for the first time since this nightmare started, he believed her. Catherine cleared her throat. There's one more thing. They both turned. The Holbrooks are claiming that Ms. Cross is manipulating you for access to Lily's inheritance, that the two of you are using each other, and that Lily is caught in the middle. Alina laughed bitterly. Of course they are. Which means we need to prove your relationship is genuine, that it's not some arrangement. It's not, I know, but we need to demonstrate that, publicly. Catherine looked between them, which is why I'm recommending you move in together. Daniel blinked. What? If you're living together, raising Lily together, it shows stability, commitment. It makes it harder for them to argue that this is a casual relationship. We've only been together a few months, and you're already facing a custody battle, Catherine said bluntly. This isn't about what's conventional. It's about what will win. Alina spoke before Daniel could. I'll do it. He turned to her. Alina, I was going to ask you to move in anyway, eventually. This just makes it happen sooner. She looked at Catherine. When? As soon as possible, before the emergency motion hearing. Daniel's head was spinning. Move in together, live with Alina, turn this fragile, beautiful thing between them into evidence in a courtroom. What if it doesn't work? He asked quietly. Alina took his hand. Then we'll figure it out, together. Catherine stood up. I'll file the documentation. You two need to be moved in by tomorrow night. And Daniel, I need you to prepare for the worst. If the judge grants temporary custody, Lily will go to the Holbrooks while we appeal. It won't be permanent, but I'm not letting that happen. You might not have a choice. Daniel looked at Alina, at Catherine, at the folder full of lies on the desk. Then he nodded. Fine. We move in. We fight, and we win. That afternoon, Daniel packed up his apartment. It didn't take long. He didn't own much. Clothes, Lily's toys, a few kitchen items. Everything fit in the back of his truck in 2 trips. Lily was confused at first. Why are we leaving, Daddy? Because we're going to live with Alina now. Her face lit up. Really? Really? Forever? Daniel's chest tightened. Yeah, Bug. Forever. She threw her arms around his neck and he held her tight, praying he wasn't lying. Alina had already cleared out 2 rooms for them. One for Daniel, one for Lily. She'd bought new furniture, new sheets, filled Lily's room with stuffed animals and books, and a nightlight shaped like a star. When Lily saw it, she burst into tears. What's wrong? Alina knelt down, panicked. Nothing, Lily sobbed. It's just so pretty. Alina pulled her into a hug, and Daniel watched from the doorway, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. That night, after Lily was asleep in her new room, Daniel and Alina sat on the couch in the living room. The house felt different now, less empty, more like a home. Are you okay? Alina asked. I don't know. This is going to work. You keep saying that. Because I believe it. She turned to face him. Daniel, I know this is fast. I know it's terrifying, but I meant what I said. I'm all in, whatever it takes. What if we lose? Then we appeal, and we keep fighting. What if they take her away, even temporarily? Alina's face hardened. Then we get her back. Daniel looked at her. This woman who'd spent years building walls, who'd locked herself in a mansion and convinced herself she didn't need anyone. And now here she was, ready to tear down everything she'd built for a man and a little girl she barely knew. I love you, he said. Alina's breath caught. What? I love you. I should have said it sooner, but I was scared. And I'm still scared, but I need you to know. Her eyes filled with tears. I love you too. They kissed, slow and desperate, and for a moment the world outside didn't exist. No courtroom, no Holbrooks, no nightmare waiting for them in 48 hours. Just them. The emergency motion hearing was worse than the first one. The Holbrooks lawyer came prepared with a file 3 inches thick. Daniel's late rent. Lily's absences from school. The neighbor who'd allegedly seen Daniel drinking at 10 in the morning. A former co-worker who claimed Daniel was aggressive and unstable after his ex-wife left. Catherine fought back hard, calling the claims exaggerated and unsubstantiated. She brought in Daniel's landlord, who admitted Daniel had only been late because his truck had broken down and he'd had to pay for repairs. She brought in Lily's teacher, who testified that Lily was a happy, well-adjusted child. She brought in 3 clients who swore Daniel was professional, skilled, and reliable. And then she called Alina to the stand. Alina sat in the witness box, her spine straight, her expression calm. The Holbrooks lawyer circled her like a shark. Ms. Cross, you've known Mr. Reese for approximately 3 months, correct? Yes. And in that time, you've developed a romantic relationship with him? Yes. Would you say this relationship developed quickly? I'd say it developed naturally. Naturally, the lawyer smiled. Ms. Cross, isn't it true that you've struggled with relationships in the past? That your marriage ended in your husband's death? Under circumstances that were, Objection, Catherine snapped. Ms. Cross is not on trial here. Sustained, the judge said. Move on, counselor. The lawyer adjusted his tie. Ms. Cross, do you have any experience raising children? No. Any training? Any background in child development or education? No. So you're learning as you go? Yes. Like most parents. But you're not a parent, are you? Alina's jaw tightened. Not legally. Not yet. And yet you've inserted yourself into this child's life. Moved her into your home. Do you think that's appropriate? I think loving someone is appropriate. But is it responsible? You're a billionaire CEO. You travel constantly. You work 80-hour weeks. How exactly do you plan to be present for a 6-year-old child? I'm stepping back from my company. I've already informed the board. The lawyer's eyebrows shot up. You're stepping back because of this relationship. Because I want a life that matters. Or because you want access to a $750,000 inheritance. The courtroom went silent. Alina leaned forward, her voice ice cold. If I wanted $750,000, I'd make it in a week. I don't need Lily's money. I need Lily and Daniel. Because for the first time in my life, I have something worth more than a bank account. So if you want to sit here and accuse me of being manipulative or opportunistic, go ahead. But you're wrong. And deep down, you know it. The lawyer stared at her, then sat down. The judge looked at Alina for a long moment. Then she looked at Daniel, then at the Holbrooks. I'm going to deny the emergency motion, she said. Daniel's knees almost gave out. However, the judge continued, I am deeply concerned about the allegations raised here. Mr. Reese, you will be subject to supervised visits until the full hearing. A social worker will conduct a home evaluation, and I strongly suggest both parties prepare for a contentious trial. We're adjourned. She banged the gavel, and it was over. For now. Outside the courthouse, Daniel pulled Alina into his arms. She was shaking. You were incredible, he whispered. I meant every word. I know. They stood there, holding each other while cameras flashed around them, and Daniel realized something. They hadn't won yet, but they hadn't lost, and that was enough to keep fighting. The social worker arrived on a Tuesday morning. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she looked exactly like someone who'd seen too many broken homes and stopped being surprised by human dysfunction. She carried a clipboard and wore sensible shoes and introduced herself with a handshake that felt like a test. Daniel opened the door wider. Come in. Patricia stepped inside, her eyes already scanning, taking inventory, judging. She walked through the entryway, past the living room where Lily's coloring books were spread across the coffee table, into the kitchen where breakfast dishes still sat in the sink. Sorry about the mess, Alina said, coming down the stairs. We were running late this morning. Patricia didn't smile. I'm not here to inspect your housekeeping, Ms. Cross. I'm here to assess whether this environment is suitable for a 6-year-old child. Right, of course. They sat in the living room. Patricia pulled out a pen and opened her notepad. Mr. Reese, how long have you and Miss Cross been living together? 2 weeks. And prior to that, you were living in a 1-bedroom apartment with your daughter. Yes. You were behind on rent. Daniel's jaw tightened. I was late twice. Both times I paid in full within a week. Why were you late? Because my truck broke down and I had to choose between fixing it so I could get to work or paying rent on time. I chose work. Patricia wrote something down. And now you're living here in Ms. Cross's home, rent-free. Yes. Does that feel sustainable to you, long-term? Daniel glanced at Alina. We're building a life together, so yeah, it's sustainable. Ms. Cross, you've stated in court documents that you're stepping back from your position as CEO. Is that accurate? Yes. Why? Alina didn't hesitate. Because I want to be present. For Daniel and for Lily. My company consumed my entire life. I'm not willing to let that happen anymore. And you don't think that's a rash decision, given the circumstances? I think it's the sanest decision I've ever made. Patricia made another note. Where's Lily now? School, Daniel said. She'll be home around 3. I'd like to see her room. Alina stood. This way. They climbed the stairs, and Patricia inspected Lily's bedroom with the same clinical detachment she'd brought to the rest of the house. She checked the closet, looked under the bed, ran her hand over the dresser. Then she opened the nightstand drawer. Inside was Lily's stuffed rabbit, a stack of books, and a framed photo. Daniel and Lily at the park, both of them laughing, ice cream smeared on Lily's face. Patricia picked up the photo. When was this taken? Last summer, Daniel said, before everything fell apart. Before her mother left. Yes. Patricia set the photo down and closed the drawer. Does Lily ask about her mother? Sometimes. And what do you tell her, Shikatis? Daniel's throat tightened. That her mom loved her but couldn't stay. That it's not Lily's fault. Do you believe that? It doesn't matter what I believe. It's what she needs to hear. Patricia studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to Alina. And what's your role in this family, Ms. Cross? Alina met her gaze. I'm not trying to replace Lily's mother. I'm just trying to be someone she can count on. That's a lot of responsibility. I know. Are you ready for it? Alina didn't flinch. I'm learning. Every day. Patricia nodded slowly. Then she walked out of the room, back downstairs, and sat on the couch again. She flipped through her notes, her expression unreadable. I'll be submitting my report to the judge by the end of the week, she said. In the meantime, I need to observe you with Lily. I'll be back this evening when she's home from school. Daniel's stomach dropped. You're coming back tonight? Yes. Is that a problem? No, it's just... He stopped himself. No, it's fine. Patricia stood. I'll see you at 6. After she left, Daniel collapsed on the couch, his head in his hands. Alina sat beside him, her hand on his back. That was brutal, she said. She hates us. She doesn't hate us. She's just doing her job. Her job is to find reasons to take Lily away. Daniel, you heard her. Everything she asked was a trap. The rent, the moving in, you stepping back from the company, She's building a case. Then we give her nothing to work with. Alina's voice was firm. Tonight, we're calm. We're stable. We show her exactly what Lily's life looks like here. And we don't let her rattle us. Daniel looked at her, his chest tight. I don't know how you stay so steady. Because I have to. For you. For Lily. She cupped his face. We're going to get through this. He wanted to believe her, but the fear was choking him. That evening, Patricia returned at 6 sharp. Lily was in the living room, working on a puzzle with Alina. She looked up when the doorbell rang, her face curious. Who's that, Daddy? Someone who wants to meet you, Daniel said, opening the door. Patricia stepped inside and Lily stood up, suddenly shy. She moved closer to Alina, her hand reaching for Alina's. Hi, Lily, Patricia said, kneeling down. My name is Patricia. I'm here to talk to you for a little bit. Is that okay? Lily nodded, her eyes wide. Can we sit together? Maybe finish this puzzle? Lily glanced at Alina, who smiled and squeezed her hand. It's okay, sweetheart. Go ahead. Lily walked over to the coffee table and sat down. Patricia joined her, picking up a puzzle piece. This is a big puzzle, Patricia said. What's it going to be when it's done? A castle, Lily said quietly. With a dragon. That sounds cool. Do you like dragons? Yeah, they're strong. They are. Do you feel strong? Lily thought about it. Sometimes. What about when you don't feel strong? What do you do then? I talk to my daddy. Or Alina. Patricia glanced at Alina, then back at Lily. You like living here with Alina? Yeah, she's really nice, and she has a pool. That does sound nice. Do you miss your old apartment? Lily shook her head. This is better. It's bigger. And it's not so loud. What was loud about the old apartment? The people upstairs, they yelled a lot, and Daddy was sad there. Daniel's chest tightened. He hadn't realized Lily had noticed. Patricia's expression softened. Is he still sad? Not as much. Alina makes him happy. What about you? Does Alina make you happy? Lily nodded. She reads to me before bed, and she helps me with my homework, and she hugs me when I'm sad. Do you get sad a lot? Lily's face fell. Sometimes, when I think about my mom. What do you think about? Why she left? If it was because of me. Daniel stood up, his hands clenched. That's enough. Patricia looked at him. Mr. Reese, you're upsetting her. I'm assessing her emotional state. You're about... By making her relive the worst thing that ever happened to her? His voice cracked. She's 6 years old. She doesn't need this. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Daddy, I'm okay. No, you're not. Daniel crossed the room and knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms. You don't have to talk about this if you don't want to. But the lady can leave. Patricia stood. Mr. Reese, I understand you're upset, but... Get out. Excuse me? You heard me. Get out of my house. Alina stood, her voice calm but firm. Daniel, no. He looked at Patricia, his eyes blazing. You don't get to come into our home and interrogate my daughter like she's a criminal. You don't get to make her cry so you can check a box on your report. So leave. Now. Patricia's expression hardened. If I leave, my report will reflect that you were uncooperative and hostile. I don't care. Get out, bossa. For a long moment, Patricia just stared at him. Then she picked up her clipboard and walked to the door. She paused, looking back at Lily, who was still crying in Daniel's arms. I'm sorry I upset you, Lily, she said quietly. Then she left. The door closed and the house went silent. Lily pulled back, looking at Daniel with wet eyes. Did I do something wrong? No, Bug. You didn't do anything wrong. But she was asking me questions. And you answered them. You did great. He kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. Lily sniffled. Are they going to take me away? Daniel's throat closed. No, I'm not going to let that happen. Promise? He couldn't, but he looked at his daughter and lied again. Promise. Alina knelt beside them, pulling them both into her arms. We're not going anywhere, Lily. We're staying together, all of us. Lily buried her face in Alina's shoulder, and they stayed like that for a long time. 3 people holding on to each other like the world was trying to rip them apart. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat on the back patio with a beer he didn't want. Alina joined him, her face drawn. "Catherine called," she said. "Patricia already submitted her preliminary report." Daniel's stomach sank. "What'd she say?" That you were defensive and hostile, that you refused to cooperate, that Lily showed signs of emotional distress. Of course she did. Patricia was making her talk about her mom. I know, but that's not how it's going to read in court. Daniel threw the beer bottle against the yard. It shattered, the sound too loud in the quiet night. "We're going to lose. We're not." "Yes, we are." He stood up, pacing. "Every time we do the right thing, it gets twisted. Every time we fight, it makes us look worse. So what's the point? What's the point of any of this?" Alina stood, grabbing his arm. "The point is Lily. That little girl in there who loves you more than anything, who's counting on you not to give up. I don't know how to win this. Then we stop trying to win and start trying to survive." Her voice broke. "One day at a time. One hearing at a time, one breath at a time, until we're on the other side." Daniel looked at her, and the exhaustion in her eyes mirrored his own. "I'm so tired, Alina." "I know, me too." They held each other in the dark, and Daniel realized something. They weren't the people they'd been when this started. The exhausted single father and the lonely billionaire had been scraped down to something rawer, something more honest. 2 people who loved each other and didn't know if love would be enough. The full custody hearing was set for December 10th, 3 weeks away. Catherine spent those weeks preparing like they were going to war. Depositions, witness lists, evidence. She drilled Daniel on every question he might be asked, made him practice staying calm, made him memorize answers that wouldn't get him crucified. Alina did the same. She met with financial advisors, signed documents transferring control of her company, prepared statements about her relationship with Daniel. She spent hours with Lily, building a bond that anyone watching could see was genuine. But the Holbrooks weren't sitting idle. 2 weeks before the hearing, their lawyer leaked a story to the press. Billionaire's boyfriend accused of unstable behavior. The article painted Daniel as a deadbeat father who'd latched onto Alina for money. It quoted anonymous sources saying Daniel drank, lost his temper, couldn't hold down steady work. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Daniel stopped going to job sites. He couldn't handle the stares, the whispers, the clients who suddenly found someone else to hire. Alina tried to shield him from it, but the headlines kept coming. Their relationship dissected, their home life analyzed. Photos of Lily leaving school, her face blurred out but still recognizable. One morning, Daniel found Alina crying in the bathroom. She'd tried to hide it, but her shoulders were shaking, her face buried in her hands. "Hey." He knelt beside her. "What happened?" "The board voted me out." Daniel's chest tightened. "What?" "They said I'm a liability, that my personal life is damaging the company's reputation. They gave me 30 days to resign or they'll force me out." "Alina, I'm so sorry." "Don't." She looked at him, her face red and puffy. "Don't apologize. This isn't your fault." "It is. If you hadn't what? Needed help? Fallen in love with me? Built a life with me?" She grabbed his hands. "That company took everything from me for 10 years. My time, my happiness, my soul. And now they think they can take you and Lily too? No, I'd rather lose the company." "You don't mean that." "I do. I've never meant anything more." Daniel pulled her into his arms, and she broke down completely. All the strength she'd been holding on to, all the walls she'd built, crumbled. And Daniel held her through it, this woman who'd given up everything for him and wondered if he was worth the cost. The day of the hearing arrived cold and gray. Daniel dressed Lily in her favorite dress, the blue one with the white flowers. She looked so small, so fragile. "Do I have to go, Daddy?" "No, Bug. You're staying with a friend today." "But what if the judge wants to see me?" "She won't." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Are they going to take me away?" Daniel knelt down, his hands shaking. I don't know, baby, but I'm going to fight as hard as I can to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't want to live with those people. I don't even know them. I know. I want to stay with you and Alina. Daniel's throat closed. Me too. He dropped her off with their neighbor, a kind woman who'd been watching Lily since this nightmare started. Then he drove to the courthouse with Alina, neither of them speaking. The courtroom was packed. Daniel's friends from work, the few who'd stuck by him. Alina's assistant, who'd quit her job the same day Alina got forced out. And the Holbrooks, sitting on the other side with their lawyer, their faces calm and righteous. The judge entered. The same woman as before. She looked tired. Let's begin. The next 4 hours were hell. The Holbrooks' lawyer tore into Daniel, painted him as irresponsible, unstable, dependent, brought up the late rent, the missed school days, the hostile interaction with Patricia Chen. He called witnesses who claimed Daniel was short-tempered and unreliable. He showed photos of Daniel leaving bars, implying he was drinking heavily, even though Daniel had been picking up Lily from birthday parties, not getting drunk. Catherine fought back. She called Daniel's clients, who swore he was professional and skilled. She called Lily's teacher, who testified that Lily was thriving. She called the neighbor, who talked about what a devoted father Daniel was. And then she called Alina. Alina took the stand, and the Holbrooks' lawyer went for the throat. Miss Cross, you were recently forced out of your company, correct? I resigned. You resigned after the board asked you to step down. Yes, because your relationship with Mr. Reese was damaging the company's reputation. Because the board cared more about appearances than integrity. Isn't it true that you've lost most of your fortune? I've lost access to company stock. I still have more money than I'll ever need. And isn't it true that you're facing lawsuits from former business partners who claim you breached contracts? Those lawsuits are baseless, but they exist, which suggests your judgment has been compromised. Pasis chetim mambam. Alina's eyes flashed. My judgment is fine. I chose Daniel and Lily over a company that never cared about me. If that's compromised judgment, then I'm guilty. You chose them, or you chose the idea of them? What's that supposed to mean? It means you're a woman who spent her entire adult life building walls, who married a man she didn't love, who isolated herself so completely that when someone finally showed her kindness, you mistook it for love. Objection, Catherine said sharply. Sustained. But the damage was done. The lawyer smiled. No further questions. When it was Daniel's turn to testify, he felt like he was walking to his own execution. The Holbrooks' lawyer asked him about Claire, about why she left, about whether he blamed himself, about whether he was using Alina to fill a void. Daniel answered every question as honestly as he could, but he could see the judge's face, see the doubt creeping in. Finally, the lawyer asked the question Daniel had been dreading. Mr. Reese, do you think you're the best person to raise Lily? Daniel's throat tightened. Yes. Even though you can barely support her financially, even though you've brought her into a relationship that's already falling apart, even though you kicked a social worker out of your home because you couldn't handle her questions? I didn't kick her out because I couldn't handle it. I kicked her out because she was hurting my daughter. Or because you were afraid of what Lily might say. Objection, withdrawn. The lawyer looked at Daniel. Do you love your daughter, Mr. Reese? More than anything. Then why are you putting her through this? Why not let her go to a stable home where she'll be taken care of? Daniel's hands clenched. Because she doesn't need money. She needs me. Does she? Or is that what you need to believe? Catherine stood. Your Honor, enough. The judge's voice cut through the room. I've heard enough. Everyone went silent. The judge looked at Daniel, then at the Holbrooks, then at Alina. This case has been incredibly difficult to assess. Both sides have presented compelling arguments. Both sides clearly care about this child. But ultimately, my decision has to be based on what's in Lily's best interest. And after reviewing all the evidence, I've reached a conclusion. But Daniel's heart stopped. Custody will remain with Mr. Reese. The courtroom erupted. The Holbrooks' lawyer shot to his feet, objecting. Richard's face went red. Margaret started crying, but the judge wasn't finished. However, I am granting the Holbrooks supervised visitation, 1 weekend per month, non-negotiable. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. Your Honor, Mr. Reese, these people are Lily's grandparents. They have a right to know her, and she has a right to know them. My ruling stands. She banged the gavel. It was over. Daniel walked out of the courthouse in a daze. He'd won. Lily was staying with him. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a wound that would never fully heal. Alina grabbed his hand. We won. Did we? Yes. She's staying with us. Daniel looked at her, and the exhaustion in her face broke something in him. You gave up everything for this. I gave up nothing that mattered. Alina, Daniel. She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. I chose you, I chose Lily. I chose this life, and I'd do it again, 1,000 times. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, and she kissed him back. They'd survived. Barely. But they'd survived. The first visitation weekend happened in January, 2 months after the hearing. Daniel had fought it, hired Catherine to file an appeal, argued that forcing Lily to spend time with strangers was traumatic and unnecessary. The judge denied every motion. The Holbrooks had rights, she said, and Lily had a right to know her family. Daniel didn't agree, but he didn't have a choice. The Friday afternoon they were supposed to drop Lily off. She cried for an hour. She wrapped her arms around Daniel's waist and refused to let go, her face pressed against his shirt. I don't want to go, Daddy. I know, Bug. I don't know them. What if they're mean? They won't be mean. How do you know? Daniel didn't. He looked at Alina, who was standing in the doorway with tears in her eyes. She'd been quiet all morning, moving through the house like a ghost. Because if they are, Alina said, kneeling beside Lily, you call us immediately, and we'll come get you, okay? Lily nodded, sniffling. Promise? Promise. The drive to the Holbrooks estate was silent. Lily sat in the back seat clutching her rabbit, her face pressed against the window. Daniel's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Alina kept one hand on his leg, grounding him. The Holbrooks lived in a house that made Alina's mansion look modest. Gates, security, a driveway that curved through manicured gardens. When they pulled up to the front entrance, Richard and Margaret were waiting on the steps, their faces carefully neutral. Daniel got out first, then Alina, then, reluctantly, Lily. Margaret stepped forward, her eyes filling with tears when she saw Lily. Oh, you look just like her. Lily shrank back against Daniel's leg. This is your grandmother, Daniel said quietly, and your grandfather. Richard crouched down, his expression softening in a way Daniel hadn't seen in court. Hi, Lily. We're very glad to meet you. Lily didn't respond. Margaret's face crumpled. Claire used to love this house. She'd run through those gardens for hours when she was your age. I'm not my mom, Lily said, her voice small but firm. The words hung in the air. Richard cleared his throat. No, you're not. You're Lily, and we'd like to get to know you. Lily looked up at Daniel. Do I have to? Daniel's chest ached. He wanted to say no, wanted to pick her up, put her back in the truck, and drive away. But the judge's words echoed in his head. Non-negotiable. Yeah, Bug, you do, but just for the weekend, and then you're coming home. Promise? Promise. Lily took a shaky breath, then walked toward the Holbrooks. Margaret reached for her hand, but Lily pulled away, clutching her rabbit tighter. We'll take good care of her, Richard said, looking at Daniel. Daniel didn't trust himself to speak. He just nodded. As they drove away, Alina finally broke down. She pressed her hand over her mouth, her shoulders shaking, and Daniel had to pull over because he couldn't see through his own tears. They sat on the side of the road holding each other, and Daniel realized something. Winning custody hadn't ended the fight. It had just changed the battlefield. That weekend was the longest of Daniel's life. He and Alina moved through the house like zombies. They tried to distract themselves, cleaned out the garage, started painting the guest room, watched movies they didn't pay attention to. But everything felt hollow without Lily. On Sunday afternoon, they picked her up. She ran down the steps and threw herself into Daniel's arms, and he held her so tight he thought he might break her. I missed you, Daddy. I missed you too, Bug. So much. In the truck, Lily was quiet. Daniel kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, waiting for her to say something. Finally, Alina turned around. How was it? Sweetheart? Lily shrugged. Okay. Just okay? They tried really hard. They made me pancakes. And they have a big playroom with a lot of toys. And they showed me pictures of my mom when she was little. Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. What'd you think? She looked sad, even when she was smiling. No one spoke for a moment. They kept asking me questions, Lily continued, about school and my friends and what I like to do. And my grandma cried a lot. Why? Alina asked gently. Because I reminded her of my mom. She said I have her eyes. Lily paused. Daddy, do you think my mom was sad because of me? Daniel's throat closed. He pulled the truck over again, this time into a parking lot. He twisted around to look at his daughter, his heart breaking. No, Lily, your mom's sadness had nothing to do with you. Sometimes people carry pain that's too big for them to handle. And it's not fair and it's not right. But it's not your fault. Then why did she leave? Because she didn't know how to stay. And that was her failure, not yours. Lily's eyes filled with tears. But I want a mom. Alina unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed into the back seat, pulling Lily into her arms. You have me. I know I'm not your mom. I know I can't replace her. But I love you so much. And I'm not going anywhere. Lily buried her face in Alina's shoulder. Do you promise? I promise. Daniel watched them, and something shifted in his chest. They were broken, all three of them. Scarred by people who'd left, by fights they shouldn't have had to fight. But they were here, together. And maybe that was enough. The visits continued every month. Some weekends were easier than others. Lily slowly warmed to the Holbrooks, though she never called them Grandma and Grandpa, just Margaret and Richard. She'd come home with stories about horseback riding lessons, and trips to the art museum, and fancy dinners she didn't really enjoy. The Holbrooks were trying, Daniel could see that, but they were trying to replace Claire. And Lily wasn't Claire. In March, Daniel and Alina decided to buy a house. Not Alina's mansion, which had always felt like hers, but something new. Something that belonged to all three of them. They found a place on the edge of the city. Modest, 3 bedrooms, a yard big enough for a swing set, and a garden. It needed work. The kitchen was outdated, the floors were scratched, the paint was peeling, but it had good bones. Are you sure about this? Daniel asked as they stood in the empty living room. You could buy something 10 times nicer. Alina looked around, her eyes bright. I don't want nicer, I want ours. They spent the next 3 months renovating. Daniel did most of the work himself, rewiring outlets, fixing plumbing, replacing broken fixtures. Alina painted walls, ripped up old carpet, refinished cabinets. Lily helped where she could, mostly by making messes and asking 1,000 questions. It was exhausting and chaotic, and nothing went smoothly. The drywall cracked. The sink leaked. They ran out of money halfway through and had to wait a month before finishing the master bathroom. Daniel and Alina fought about paint colors and furniture and whether they needed a fence. Lily spilled an entire can of primer on the hardwood floor. But slowly, the house became a home. One afternoon in May, Daniel was installing new light fixtures in the kitchen when Lily wandered in, covered in dirt from the backyard. Daddy, can we get a dog? Daniel looked down at her. What? A dog. Alina said we have space now, and I've always wanted one. Dogs are a lot of work, Bug. I know, but I'd take care of it, I promise. Daniel glanced at Alina, who was leaning against the counter trying not to smile. You put her up to this? Maybe. He sighed. What kind of dog? Lily's face lit up. A rescue. Mrs. Carter at school said rescues need families the most. Daniel's chest tightened. Yeah, okay, we can look. Yeah. 2 weeks later, they brought home a scruffy mutt from the shelter. He was part lab, part something else, with floppy ears and a tail that never stopped wagging. Lily named him Charlie, and he followed her everywhere. He chewed through 2 pairs of shoes, knocked over a lamp, and dug holes in the garden Alina had just planted. But he was part of the family. By July, the house was finished. Daniel stood in the kitchen one morning, drinking coffee, and looking out at the backyard where Lily was playing with Charlie. Alina came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. We did it, she said. Yeah, we did. Are you happy? Daniel thought about it, really thought about it. He thought about the last year, the custody battle, the media circus, the fear that had consumed him. He thought about the nights he'd lain awake, terrified of losing Lily, the mornings he'd woken up exhausted and broken. He thought about everything he'd lost and everything he'd gained. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think I am." Alina kissed his shoulder. "Good, because I have something to tell you." He turned around. "What?" She pulled out her phone and showed him a message. It was from a startup incubator offering her a position as an advisor. Not a CEO, not a board member, just someone who could help other entrepreneurs avoid the mistakes she'd made. "I start next month," she said. "Part-time, flexible hours, so I can still be here." Daniel pulled her into his arms. "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us." They stood there in their kitchen, in their house, and Daniel realized something. Happiness wasn't a destination. It wasn't something you achieved and then kept forever. It was a choice you made every day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. In August, Daniel got a call from Catherine. The Holbrooks wanted to renegotiate the visitation agreement. Daniel's stomach dropped, bracing for another fight. But when he met with their lawyer, the request wasn't what he expected. They wanted to reduce the visits to once every other month. Daniel stared at the lawyer. "Why?" "Because Lily has made it clear she's not comfortable with monthly visits, and my clients don't want to force her." Daniel didn't trust it. "What's the catch?" "No catch. They love their granddaughter, but they recognize that she already has a family, and they don't want to disrupt that." Daniel left the meeting in a daze. When he told Alina, she didn't believe it either. "There has to be something," she said. "People like that don't just give up." But weeks passed, and nothing happened. The new agreement went through, and slowly, Daniel started to believe that maybe, just maybe, the Holbrooks had finally seen what he'd been trying to tell them all along. Lily didn't need their money or their estate or their attempts to recreate Claire. She just needed to be loved for who she was. One evening in September, after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel found Alina standing in the doorway of the unfinished garage. They'd been planning to convert it into a workshop, but life had gotten in the way. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked. Alina smiled. "How different everything is. A year ago, I was in that mansion, drowning in work, convinced I'd die alone. And now I'm here, in this house, with you and Lily, and a dog who won't stop eating my shoes." "You regret it?" "Not for a second." She looked at him. "Do you?" Daniel thought about his old life, the tiny apartment, the late rent, the loneliness that had hollowed him out from the inside. Then he thought about this life, the fights and the fears, and the moments when he wasn't sure they'd make it. "No," he said, "I don't regret a thing." Alina stepped closer, taking his hand. "I want to ask you something." Daniel's heart kicked up. "Okay, not now, but soon, when the time is right." She paused. "I want to marry you, Daniel." He stared at her. "Are you proposing?" "Not yet. I'm just telling you so you don't beat me to it." Daniel laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "You think I'm going to propose?" "I think you're traditional enough that it might cross your mind. But I wanted you to know that when it happens, I want it to be mutual, a choice we make together." Daniel pulled her close. "What if I already bought a ring?" Alina pulled back, her eyes wide. "Did you?" "Maybe." "Daniel Reese." He kissed her, cutting off the question. And when they broke apart, he smiled. "I was going to wait, do it right. But if you want to jump the gun—" "I want to do it together," Alina said. "No surprises, no grand gestures, just us, honest and real." Daniel nodded. "Okay, together, so..." 2 weeks later, on a quiet Saturday morning, Daniel stood in the kitchen making pancakes while Lily set the table and Alina made coffee. Charlie was sprawling under the table, hoping for scraps. The radio played softly in the background. Everything was ordinary. Everything was perfect. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. It wasn't expensive, a simple silver band with a small diamond, but it was real. He turned off the stove and walked over to Alina. She looked up, saw the ring, and her breath caught. "I know we said we'd do this together," Daniel said. "But I need to say something first." Alina's eyes filled with tears. A year ago, I thought I knew what my life was supposed to be. Work, survive, raise Lily. That was it. I didn't think I deserved anything else. And then you called me at midnight because your lights were out, and everything changed. His voice cracked. You saved me, Alina. Not with your money, not with your house. You saved me by showing me what it looks like to stop surviving and start living. So I'm asking you, will you marry me? Alina was crying now, not bothering to wipe her tears. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. Daniel slid the ring on her finger, and she kissed him, hard and desperate and full of everything they'd survived to get here. Lily looked up from the table. Are you guys getting married? Alina pulled back, laughing through her tears. Yeah, Alina, sweetheart. We are. Lily grinned. Can I be in the wedding? You're going to be the most important person there, Alina said. They got married in October in the backyard of their house. No media, no tabloids, just 20 people who actually mattered. Catherine was there. Daniel's friends from work, Alina's assistant, the neighbor who'd watched Lily during the custody battle. And surprisingly, the Holbrooks. Margaret and Richard stood in the back, watching quietly. After the ceremony, Margaret approached Alina with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said quietly, for loving her and for giving her the life Claire couldn't. Alina nodded, her throat tight. She's easy to love. So is Lily. They didn't become close. The wounds were too deep for that. But they found a kind of peace. An understanding that Lily was better off with people who wanted her for who she was, not who they wanted her to be. The reception was simple. Cake and music and dancing in the living room. Lily wore a white dress and twirled until she was dizzy. Charlie stole half the appetizers. Daniel's best man gave a speech that made everyone cry. And when it was over, when the guests had left and Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, Daniel and Alina stood on the back porch, watching the stars. We did it, Alina said. Yeah, we did. Are you happy? Daniel thought about the question. Really thought about it. He thought about the year they'd survived, the battles, the scars, the moments when he'd been sure they wouldn't make it. And then he thought about this moment, the house they'd built, the family they'd become, the life they'd fought for. Yeah, he said, I am. 6 months later, on a warm spring evening, Daniel was sitting on the porch with Alina, watching Lily play with Charlie in the yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Everything was quiet, peaceful. Lily ran over, breathless and grinning. Daddy, can we go get ice cream? It's almost bedtime, Bug. Please? Daniel looked at Alina, who smiled. I think we can make an exception. They piled into the truck, all three of them, and Charlie, who wasn't supposed to come, but always did, and drove to the ice cream shop downtown. Lily got her usual chocolate chip cookie dough. Daniel got vanilla. Alina got mint chocolate chip. They sat on a bench outside, eating their cones while Charlie begged for bites. Lily swung her legs, humming to herself. Alina leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder, and then Lily asked the question that changed everything. Daddy, are you happy? Daniel looked at her, at this little girl who'd survived abandonment and custody battles and more pain than any kid should have to carry. This little girl who still believed in happy endings. He looked at Alina, who'd given up an empire to find something real, who'd chosen love over safety, family over fortune. He looked at the life they'd built from broken pieces, and for the first time in years, he told the truth without hesitation. Yes, baby, I really am. Lily smiled. Good. Me too, she. They finished their ice cream as the sun set, and Daniel realized something he'd been too scared to believe for a long time. Happiness wasn't about having a perfect life. It wasn't about money or mansions or checking boxes on someone else's list. It was about this. Sitting on a bench with the people you loved, eating ice cream on a Tuesday night, and knowing you'd fought for every second of it. Some people spent their whole lives searching for happiness in the wrong places. Daniel had spent years doing the same, but he'd learned something through all the pain and fear and exhaustion. Happiness wasn't something you found. It was something you built. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. And sometimes the most broken people built the most beautiful things. 3 people who'd survived alone had found each other in the dark. A single father who'd forgotten what it felt like to hope. a billionaire who'd traded her soul for success, and a little girl who'd learned too young that love could be conditional. They'd been drowning, all of them, surviving but not living. And then they'd found each other. Not because it was easy, not because it was perfect, but because they'd made a choice to fight, to stay, to build something real from the wreckage of everything they'd lost. The world didn't make it easy. People judged, courts intervened, the media tore them apart. But they survived, because they had each other. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Daniel looked at Alina, her hand in his, her head on his shoulder. He looked at Lily, chocolate smeared on her face, laughing at Charlie's attempts to jump high enough to steal her cone. This was it. This was the life he'd stopped believing he deserved. And he'd never been happier. Because happiness wasn't about what you had, it was about who you fought for. And Daniel had fought for this, every single day. So when Lily asked him that question, the one that used to haunt him, the one he'd lied about for years, he finally answered with his whole heart. Yes, baby, I'm happy. For real this time. And he was.